For more than 2 decades, Nicole Kidman built a career on elegance, prestige, and the kind of roles Hollywood calls untouchable. She became the face of award-season drama, the queen of refined storytelling, and the actress studios relied on when they wanted something polished, never reckless, never chaotic, never unpredictable. But what nobody realized was that behind that flawless image, Kidman had been avoiding one genre with almost surgical precision: horror. Not because she couldn't handle it, she proved her power in the others, but because stepping back into those shadows meant confronting a part of herself she'd buried long ago. That's why the announcement of the young people shook the industry in a way no one expected. Overnight, whispers spread across social media: why now? Why horror? And why Osgood Perkins, a director known for atmospheric dread, extreme psychological tension, and stories that leave audiences feeling like something is watching them from behind? Every detail added another layer of curiosity. Fans who followed Nicole for 20 years sensed that this wasn't just another role. Something about this return felt intentional, maybe even personal. For years, insiders claimed Kidman avoided darker genres because of how emotionally demanding they were. Those who worked with her on the others said she carried the film's haunting weight long after filming wrapped: the long nights, the isolation, the mental strain of embodying fear on screen. But that was 24 years ago. A lifetime. So why walk back into that world now, when her career is already solidified, respected, and adored? Rumors started swirling the moment her name was attached to the project. Some said she'd been waiting for the right script, something that blended elegance with terror. Others suggested she wanted to challenge herself again, to force her audience and Hollywood to see a side of her she'd kept hidden. But then came the theory that captured the most attention: that Nicole Kidman wasn't returning to horror for the story, but for the director. Osgood Perkins, son of the legendary Anthony Perkins, has a style that feels like a slow, tightening grip. His films don't scream, they crawl under your skin. And actors who take on his projects often describe it as a psychological experience rather than a typical shoot. Kidman signing onto the young people broke a 24-year pattern, but it also signaled something more: a shift, a turning point, a quiet warning that the Nicole Kidman the world thought they knew might not be the one appearing on screen anymore. If Perkins is known for peeling back layers until the truth is exposed, then maybe Kidman was ready for her own unraveling. Or maybe the story of the young people touched something she'd been avoiding for decades. Whatever the reason, one thing became clear: this wasn't just a casting choice. It was the start of a new chapter, one far darker, far deeper, and far more unpredictable than anything she's done in years. But the real question is, what pushed her to take a role she spent nearly half her career avoiding? When news broke that Nicole Kidman had joined the young people, Hollywood's attention immediately shifted toward the man behind the film, Osgood Perkins. For years, Perkins has been quietly reshaping the horror landscape with a style that feels like stepping into a nightmare you can't fully explain. His movies don't rely on jump scares or loud shocks. Instead, they unfold like whispered secrets, building tension so slowly that by the time the fear hits, it feels disturbingly real. And that's exactly why his collaboration with Kidman sent the industry buzzing. Actors who work with Perkins often describe his sets as unsettling, not chaotic, not unsafe, just unnervingly calm. He encourages silence, long takes, stillness. He believes fear grows in the quiet moments, when an actor's mind begins filling the space with their own imagination. It's why audiences walk out of his films feeling like they've witnessed something more psychological than supernatural. And it's why fans suddenly began to wonder what Kidman was stepping into. Perkins has carved a reputation as the filmmaker who draws out layers an actor didn't even know they had. Nicolas Cage underwent one of the most chilling transformations of his career in Longlegs. Maslany took on a role in Keeper that critics called emotionally draining in the best possible way. His films demand vulnerability, an openness to fear, and a willingness to let a character swallow you whole. For an actress like Nicole Kidman, known for precision and elegance, this kind of process would be a drastic shift. But was that the point? Hollywood insiders claim Kidman had been tracking Perkins' rise for a while. She watched as Longlegs became one of 2024's most successful indie horrors, and as critics began calling Perkins the quiet architect of modern dread. Some even speculated that Kidman was waiting for the right director to challenge her emotionally, someone who wouldn't cast her for glamour or prestige, but for raw, unsettling humanity. And then came the rumor fans couldn't ignore, that Kidman was drawn to the young people because its themes hit closer to her real life than anyone expected. Nobody knows the plot yet, the studio is keeping everything under strict lock and key, but people who've seen early drafts claim the story deals with suppressed memories, fractured identities, and a lingering sense of something unresolved. For an actress who's played everything from grieving mothers to broken lovers, this script might have offered a new kind of depth, one she hadn't touched since the others. Still, something about the timing felt strange. Why agree now, in the middle of multiple ongoing projects and commitments? Why dive into horror after avoiding it for so long? Some believe Perkins personally reached out to Kidman after seeing her performance in Big Little Lies, convinced that she could handle the emotional darkness required for the role. Others insist Kidman was the one who approached him, eager to reinvent herself before Hollywood boxed her in permanently. Whatever sparked their collaboration, one thing became impossible to ignore: Kidman and Perkins weren't just working together, they were crafting something intentionally unsettling, and if the director's past films are any indication, Kidman may be stepping into the most psychologically intense role of her entire career. But what exactly is hiding inside the young people, and why is the studio keeping the story so secret? For a film that hasn't released a single poster, teaser, or official synopsis, The Young People is already one of the most talked about projects in Hollywood. Not because of leaks, there are none, but because of the unusual silence surrounding it. Every major studio typically releases small hints to build hype, a logline, a set photo, even a vague description. But with this film? Nothing. And when nothing comes out of Hollywood, that's when the whispers get louder. Insiders began noticing something strange early on. Cast and crew received contracts far stricter than usual, including confidentiality clauses that some described as eerily specific. Even seasoned actors on the project, Tatiana Maslany, Lola Tung, Brendan Hines, avoided interviews during filming. One crew member allegedly said that talking about the movie felt like opening a door you didn't want to open. Whether that comment was dramatic or genuinely fearful, no one knows. But fans took it and ran. The secrecy fueled theories everywhere. Some claimed the story was based on a real historical event too disturbing for the studio to reveal. Others suggested that the film's narrative might revolve around a psychological phenomenon that's hard to explain without spoiling the entire plot. And then there were the rumors, the ones people repeated with a mix of curiosity and hesitation, that the script included scenes so emotionally heavy, the actors needed breaks during filming. If true, that would explain why a performer as experienced as Nicole Kidman was brought in. Few actresses can handle that level of intensity, but perhaps the most interesting detail wasn't the secrecy itself, it was who wasn't keeping quiet. Critics who attended private script readings described the story as quietly devastating, uncomfortably immersive, and the kind of horror that doesn't follow you home, it follows you into your memories. One even said the script felt like a confession disguised as a nightmare. The wording was unusual, almost poetic, but it hinted at something. The Young People might not be a horror movie in the traditional sense. It could be something far more psychological, the kind of story that requires its cast to dig into human emotions most people prefer to ignore. And Nicole Kidman's role? That's where speculation becomes unavoidable. Some say she plays a mother navigating an unnerving trauma from her past. Others believe she portrays a woman trapped in a town where time behaves strangely. But the theory fans couldn't shake, the one that spread the fastest, suggested that Kidman plays someone confronting a version of herself. Not literally, but emotionally. As if the film peels back layers of identity until the truth becomes uncomfortable to look at. Industry analysts believe this secrecy isn't accidental. Neon, the studio behind the film, seems to be using silence as marketing. And in a world where everything leaks instantly, true mystery feels like power. It creates anticipation, curiosity, tension. But if the rumors are accurate, the silence may not be about hype. It might be protection for the actors, protection for the story, and maybe even protection for the audience, because whatever lives inside this film isn't just surprising, it might be something people aren't ready to confront. As excitement around The Young People grew, fans started noticing something unusual about Nicole Kidman herself. Interviews, public events, even small red carpet moments, she looked different. Not physically. Not emotionally. But energetically. Like someone carrying a story she couldn't talk about yet. And people who followed her career long enough recognized it immediately. This wasn't the polished, rehearsed Nicole from her mid-2010s press runs. This was the Nicole Kidman who took creative risks, who immersed herself fully, who stepped into roles that shook something inside her for years. Kidman chose projects built around control, precise drama, elegant storytelling, characters with emotional depth but contained edges. But her return to horror suggested she no longer wanted control. She wanted challenge. Discomfort. Something that forced her to break her own patterns. And the more fans looked back, the more they realized her career had been quietly shifting toward this point all along. It started with Big Little Lies, a performance so raw that audiences questioned how she managed to emotionally survive it. Then came The Undoing, where she played a woman unraveling under the weight of secrets she didn't know she was keeping. Slowly, her roles began exploring themes of fractured identity, suppressed truth, and emotional vulnerability. These weren't accidents. These were steps, careful, deliberate steps, towards something deeper. Industry observers began to theorize that The Young People wasn't just another project for Kidman, it was the culmination of years of emotional exploration. The chance to confront a part of herself she had only touched briefly in past roles. And when insiders claimed the film dealt with the nature of memory and self-deception, people began connecting the dots. Kidman has openly spoken about how she feels everything deeply, how acting sometimes leaves emotional residue, how certain roles stay with her long after the cameras shut down. And yet, despite these challenges, she chose this film, the darkest, quietest, most psychologically layered project she's taken in decades. Why? Some believe Kidman wanted to push herself past the boundaries Hollywood placed around her. Others think she was drawn to the script's emotional complexity, the kind of complexity that doesn't scream, but whispers. That doesn't chase fear, but invites it. But perhaps the most compelling theory came from a producer who worked briefly on pre-production. They claimed Kidman wanted a role that left marks, something that would shift her creatively and personally. A role that wasn't glamorous or safe. Something that forced her to sit with uncomfortable emotions. And Perkins, known for creating stories that bleed into an actor's psyche, offered exactly that. There's also the angle no one wants to say out loud. Kidman might be preparing for the next phase of her career. Reinvention. Transformation. A return to raw, unapologetic storytelling. The kind of roles that challenge awards voters, surprise fans, and silence critics. Whatever motivated her, one fact remained impossible to ignore. Nicole Kidman didn't step into this film because she wanted to return to horror. She stepped into it because she had to. But what exactly did she step into? Because once people learned who else was involved in this project and what rumors started coming from inside the set, the tone around the movie changed completely. By the time The Young People entered full production, excitement had turned into something stranger, a quiet concern that no one wanted to voice publicly. At first, it seemed like normal on-set intensity. Horror films often create heavy atmospheres, especially the kind Osgood Perkins directs. But this project carried a different energy, a weight that even crew members struggled to explain. And when the first whispers slipped out, they didn't sound like ordinary behind-the-scenes anecdotes. They sounded like warnings. People claimed the set felt too still, as if the film's world existed even when cameras weren't rolling. Simple scenes reportedly left actors emotionally drained, not because of the dialogue, but because of the silence between it. The tension wasn't dramatic, it was internal. Psychological. The kind of unease that makes a person question what they're feeling and why. One assistant reportedly said, "It wasn't scary. It was unsettling. Like something in the story wanted to be real. Again, maybe dramatic. Maybe exaggerated." But dozens of similar comments surfaced over time, creating a pattern too strange to ignore. What made matters even more interesting was Nicole Kidman's behavior throughout filming. She wasn't distant or fragile, she was focused, hyper-focused. Crew members described her as someone chasing a truth inside the character, going deeper into emotional territory than they'd ever seen her explore. Every take held a sense of urgency, as if the scene meant something more than the script suggested. Actors around her felt it too. Tatiana Maslany reportedly said in private that working on the film felt like being inside someone else's memory. Nobody knew what she meant, and she didn't explain it. But the comments spread rapidly among people orbiting the production, creating more theories than answers, and then came the moment that shifted everything. During an early test screening, attended only by studio executives, select critics, and internal creative teams, viewers described the film as emotionally destabilizing. Not terrifying. Not disturbing. Destabilizing. One critic wrote privately that the film doesn't scare you while you watch it, it scares you once you're alone. Another said the narrative structure was so unexpected that audiences might leave questioning their own perspective. These early impressions weren't leaked publicly, but they circulated in the industry like wildfire. What Nicole Kidman delivered in the film is still a mystery. But everyone who witnessed her performance agreed on one thing: she went further emotionally than she has in years. Maybe decades. And that became the heart of the speculation, not the plot, not the director, not the secrecy. Nicole. Why did she choose a film so heavy? Why now, after avoiding horror for 24 years, why a story shrouded in silence? Some say she wanted rebirth. Others say she wanted closure. A few believe the film offered her something she'd been quietly searching for, a chance to confront the parts of herself she usually keeps far away from the camera. But the truth is simple: every career has a turning point. And for Nicole Kidman, this film is that moment, a return, a reckoning, a transformation, and when the young people finally reaches audiences, they might realize that the horror on screen isn't the scariest part. It's what Nicole Kidman brought to it.